Hello everybody. Christopher Hooley has very kindly asked me to be one of the people to read a bedtime story for writing community. So I decided to follow his lead, and I'm reading a little bit from one of my books, which is called The Wild Roses, because there's a part in it where one of the main characters, who's called Pip, is babysitting a little girl called Bobby, and she tells her a bedtime story. And I kind of thought that seemed appropriate, so I hope you enjoy it. During her morning at work, Pip received an unexpected telephone call from Bobby's mother. It seemed Claire and Theo had a long-standing engagement that evening, and their regular babysitter had let them down. Bobby wondered if her friend from the stables would be willing to take over. At the agreed time, Pip parked her Mini on the pebbled driveway outside the Dixons' 18th-century thatched cottage, scrunched her way up to the entrance, and pulled the old black bell chime. Though the March evenings were getting lighter, the heavy overhead rain clouds oppressed the earth below with a wintry grey. There was a chill in the air that merited a heavy coat to be worn by anyone going outside. Golden light from the windows bathed her, and she caught the comforting scent of smoke from the chimney as a gust of wind briefly twisted and teased it down to greet her. Claire opened the door. She was statuesque, even more so in her high heels, wearing a long peach chiffon dress which enhanced every contour of her perfect figure. Her golden, loosely permed hair was held back by a sparkling headband, and her perfume hung in the air like a sophisticated promise of things to come. Pip, who wore a black jumper and her tartan trousers, felt tiny and inadequate next to the vision of perfection who invited her in. Bobby was nestled on the settee, already wearing her yellow pyjamas and cuddling a vivid blue Care Bear. Obviously having been told not to get up or run around, she squiggled on the sofa with glee when her friend from the stables came in. Theo descended the stairs, wearing a dinner suit and looking like James Bond, and he ushered Claire through the door with unseemly haste, barely giving her time to tell Pip about Bobby's bedtime. The two young ladies enjoyed a pleasant evening. Firstly, Pip was introduced to the Care Bears, of whom there were several. Then they played snakes and ladders. Then they had ice cream, and then they watched some telly until a small head slowly laid its weight on the babysitter's tartan thigh, and sleepy breathing began. Pip gently stroked the golden curls with one hand, and used the other to reach for the remote control and turn off the television. "I was watching that," Bobby complained with a murmur and a sigh. "Don't think you were. I think you were asleep." "No, I wasn't," the little girl protested. "Well, it's 5 minutes past when you're supposed to be in bed. I don't want to be in trouble with your mummy and daddy." "Shall I carry you up?" "Yes, please." "Oh, you are a big grown-up girl," Pip grunted when she stood up encumbered with a bobby. For a moment she feared her knee would give in, but all was well, and she creaked up the stairs with a face full of curls and two small arms tightly wrapped around her neck. The girl's room was not hard to distinguish, the pink walls and mountain of cuddly toys being something of a giveaway. The bed, festooned with Care Bears, had a white painted ornate headboard and a large downy pillow, upon which Pip deposited the golden curls. Said the babysitter. "I think you should have cleaned your teeth first. Do you think you could manage to do that?" "Too tired," the head beneath the curls proclaimed. "Be sure to give them an extra good clean in the morning," Pip instructed. "Good night, Bobby." "No, tell me a story, please." After a knowing look at her charge, Pip scanned the bookshelves. "What shall I read?" "No, tell me one of your stories, like you write for Daddy. He says that you write funny things that make him smile." Pip racked her brains for an idea. "Once upon a time, there was a little old lady called Mrs. Nestyhead." "That's a funny name." "Yes, I think so, and so did everyone else. Mrs. Nestyhead lived in a little house in the countryside, far away from all the people who laughed at her silly name. Isn't that sad? Well, Mrs. Nestyhead had very wild, messy black hair. She never brushed it, because she never saw anyone, and it was all tangled and itchy. One day she went for a walk, and a pigeon landed on her head and thought it was a comfy nest. Well, Mrs. Nestyhead didn't want to scare the poor bird away, because she knew it was about to lay an egg, so the pigeon stayed. But it wasn't so bad, because its toes scratched her itchy head. One day the egg hatched, and a baby bird was born. It grew up and flew away, and so did its mummy. But then, next year, They both came back, and they both laid eggs, and then there were 4 pigeons. Well, this went on until Mrs. Nestyhead couldn't stand up, because having so many birds on her head was very heavy, so she had to sit in a chair all day until the eggs hatched. Didn't she get hungry? Bobby asked. No, because the daddy pigeons brought her worms and spiders to eat. Yuck. Yuck! Well, when all the pigeons had gone from the year, Mrs. Nestyhead had to go into town to buy some flour to make cakes. So she walked to the shops. But, oh disaster! She didn't spot that someone had dug a deep, narrow hole, like a well in the street, and not covered it over. Poor Mrs. Nestyhead fell in, and no one had a rope long enough to reach her. Just as everyone had given up hope of rescuing her, a pigeon flew over and saw what had happened. Coo-coo! It called to its friends, and all the pigeons who had ever lived on her head came along. They all flew down into the hole, and together they picked her up by her hair and lifted her out. Everybody cheered as the birds carried Mrs. Nestyhead around the town, high above their heads, before putting her down on a comfy bench in the park. Well, everyone thought this looked great fun, so they all grew their hair like Mrs. Nestyhead, and they all let the pigeons live there, and they all went for exciting flights with their feathery friends. And that town is now called Nesty Town, and no one laughs at Mrs. Nestyhead any more. The end. Bobby's gentle breathing didn't say whether she enjoyed the story, but it did indicate that its objective of inducing sleep had been achieved. Hope you liked that, guys. Thanks ever so much.